What's good, everyone? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'll be going through my round 9 AFL tips and predictions as we take a look at round 8, and it was a poor week for mine, that is for sure. Normally a 6 out of 9 I wouldn't be too disappointed, but with how easy this week was, the fact there were no upsets, it really, it was a disappointing week. It all started off on the Friday with an incorrect tip. I went the Blues by 10 points. The Lions won it by 26, so yeah, it just wasn't a good start. Obviously, I got the next tip right in Richmond beating West Coast. I got Geelong's tip against Adelaide. I didn't got Melbourne's tip against Gold Coast. These were the two games that killed me. I just had some feeling that the Giants and the Hawks would both cause an upset with sort of the form Freo has been in and sort of the form Giants have been in. The one round I decided to take the risk, and every single favourite won, pretty much. In the Sunday games, I went put Adelaide to beat Essendon, Collingwood to beat Sydney, and St Kilda to beat North. So pretty easy round of tipping for most people. Apart from myself, though, because I got a bloody 6 out of 9, which was extremely disappointing, that's to say the least. My big calls as well, we'll quickly go through them. I've been pretty good with them so far this week, so we'll see if this is going to be another week where I avoid the most liked punishment. I got the first one correct when I said there'd be 10 or more goals combined in the first quarter. I think there were exactly 10 or more goals combined, so pretty good start for mine in getting that one correct. Then I said that Tim Kelly would have 35 more touches against the Tigers. He actually started pretty well, but he ended up only recording 29. I said that Jeremy Cameron would kick 4 or more goals by half-time. He had a bit of a quieter one. He only kicked 2 by half-time and 3 for the game. I then said that the D's would record 10 or more scoring shots over the Suns. They did have more scoring shots, but only 5 more over the Suns. In the Dogs v Giants game, I said that the Dogs would have a 20-plus point lead and choke it. It could have happened, but they ended up winning the game regardless. They won it by 15. I then said that Mitch Lewis would kick 4 more goals against the Dockers. He only recorded 2. Needing still 2 more to avoid that punishment in the Sunday games, I was extremely close. Especially in this one, put Adelaide v Essendon, I said that the Bombers would record 8 or less behinds throughout the game. At three-quarter time, they were on 11 goals 3, yet they still managed to score 9 behinds, kicking 6 in the last quarter, which, yeah, I found out after the game I was not happy. Again, another one I was pretty close. I said that the Swans would record 5 or more consecutive goals at any stage of the game. At one stage in the second, they had 4 goals in a row. Didn't get that one right, though. And with it meaning not much in the last game, I did actually get it correct, saying that North would score under 50, only scoring 34 in one of the worst games in history. So that's 2 of 9. We'll have a look at the most liked comment. I think it's from AFL Legend. He keeps telling me that his one was the most liked one, so we'll have a look at which one it was. And with 134 likes, it was to wear a dinosaur costume to an AFL game. Alongside the fairy one, which I haven't done yet. I don't know where to get these costumes from, but I need to pick like a stream or something to just order them online and just get them all done in bulk. So if we get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll organise a stream sometime this week. If not, I'll probably still will do it some other time, but if you want to see me do the punishments sooner rather than later, particularly those two, order the costume online. I'll do it on a live stream alongside maybe AFL 23 if we get 1,000 likes on the video. So leave a like if you want to see it happen, because we do still have a few punishments that need to be done. We start off on the Friday night between Richmond and Geelong at the MCG. I will be streaming this game alongside the other Friday night game, just to let you guys know. The Cats on the weekend, they recorded a fairly comfortable win. Or you say comfortable, it was actually a fairly competitive game. Adelaide certainly brought up the heat, particularly, honestly, all game, to be honest. It was just a patch in that second and third where the Cats sort of got on top and kicked a few goals in a row. But I did think that the Crows were okay. The Geelong just did what they needed to do, to be honest with you. It was sort of an expected result. It's sort of a classic Geelong performance at GMHBA. Not needing to do too much, but still playing pretty good footy to get the win. And they got the win by 26 points. I was actually at the game. Again, with the Tigers, they also had a good win. Finally back on the winners list after such a long time with the wait. But it wasn't the easiest win of all time. They certainly had to work into it. Didn't watch the game, but it was an even game pretty much until the third quarter, where they finally started getting on top, kicking multiple goals in a row, and just overrunning the Eagles, the luckless Eagles. Unfortunately, again, for the Eagles, another injury. I think, Jai Culley and ACL. Obviously, last year we saw an absolute classic between these two sides. Whilst at the moment they might not be as evenly matched up, I still feel like we could get a good contest. Richmond have been slowly getting a little bit better, I feel, in games, and I think Geelong, with a couple of injuries now in the midfield, particularly Dangerfield, obviously Guthrie's still out, so it could even the contest up. If the Tigers get on top of the midfield, you never know. Still though, with the form Geelong have been, they've probably been the most informed side in the competition, bar maybe Collingwood and Melbourne. I think you got to tip Geelong if you want to be smart, but I think it'll be a relatively decent game. I think Richmond will be up for the challenge for a lot of it, but Geelong proved to be the better side and won it by 23 points. My big call though, the Tigers lead the game at halftime. Another game on the Friday, I think because of the fact that it's Mother's Day, so they don't want to have as many Sunday games, but It's just a bit of a weird one, especially having West Coast take on the Gold Coast Suns at Optus Stadium. And it's at 8:40 as well. I don't think I've ever recalled a later start to a game than this. Both sides picked up losses on the weekend, but weren't, terrible in those losses, particularly the Suns. They only went down by 5 against Melbourne. I knew it was going to happen. They're a good side at home. Let's not undertake that at all. And I thought they honestly should have won that game. I've been told that there were a lot of calls late in that last quarter that the Suns should have gone, that they were missed. I think Charles one particularly, he was robbed in that last quarter. We're not really going to go into detail about that, the Suns robbed or anything like that. The D's obviously were too good in the end to get that win, but it was a good game. And I know right now they're sitting 14th, but it doesn't really reflect how good they've been in the last few weeks, in my opinion. West Coast, well, it's just, same old for West Coast. They're in games here and there, but they just can't put it together 4 quarters. And it was, again, the same story for West Coast on the weekend. They were good for patches against Richmond. They normally start well, but then they just fade out late, and it was sort of typical of West Coast to do that. 4 or 5 goals, I consider, I think, the third in a row. That was only 8 points at halftime. It ended up being 46 points against a Richmond side that have been in really poor form. A little bit disappointing, but again, it's West Coast, not really a lot you can say about that one. Do I think West Coast have a chance? Yes, I do, if they play more consistent footy, and I don't think Gold Coast are as much of a challenge at home than Richmond are away. In saying that, though, Gold Coast are capable of getting a pretty comfortable win if they're on. I think any side are capable, even Hawthorn, possibly capable of getting a comfortable win against West Coast. I'm going to go the Suns to win this one by 37 points. I think it'll be a close-ish first half. Gold Coast blow it out in the last half. They score 10 or more goals in the second half as well, as my big call. We head to the Saturday games, and the first one at 1:45 PM at the SCG. We've got Sydney and the Dockers. Now, Sydney, they're on a 3-game losing streak, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have lost 5 of the last 6, so they're in desperate need of a win. That is not to go unnoticed. Fremantle were in desperate need to get a win as well. They got the win. Now, I didn't tip them, which in hindsight is probably a bit of a disrespectful tip, but at least now with the Dockers, a lot of people are saying this season might be back on track. They're getting a little bit of form going. Not sure how much you can take into consideration with that one, and it's Hawthorn. It was a good win, but it's still Hawthorn, but they are playing a little bit better footy. Going through the corridor a little bit more, taking more risk, taking bolder risk, which I guess they can afford to do against a side like Hawthorn. This will be a more difficult opponent. I know Sydney are in some pretty poor form, but I think Sydney can still get their season back on track, and it can all start with a good win against the Dockers. I think they've still been decent enough at the SCG, the Swans. I know they've lost 2 of their 3 games, but they've both been close losses, which they probably should have won. It'll be relatively close, I reckon. It'll be one of those games that Sydney are the more dominant side, but just can't really put them away with bad kicking like last week against Collingwood and Fremantle. Just that plucky side that just stays in the game for pretty much all of it, I reckon. But I think Sydney will find a way to win it, and they should win it. They need to win it. It's such a big win. It's such an important game for Sydney, for both sides really, but particularly the Swans. I think they'll win it by 14 points. My big call, the Swans score 6 or more behinds in any quarter. Now, this game is a little bit of an underrated one for what it's worth. Obviously, the 2 sides are on opposite ends of the ladder, but, I think this is one that a lot of footy fans would have penciled in their calendar ahead of the season, because obviously North will take on Port Adelaide, and Jason Horne-Francis is playing against his former side, and we're talking about all the booing, obviously, on the weekend about Buddy and all that, but there's no way that this game won't be without any boos. It's going to be a really hostile environment for Horne-Francis. It probably should have been a game scheduled at Marvel when you really think about it, but regardless, though, it's a game of footy. I think it should be a game where Port Adelaide are going to be licking their lips after what we've seen. North Melbourne 5 losses on the trot. Port Adelaide 5 wins on the trot. In fact, this could be for 6 in a row for Port Adelaide. And it should be 6 in a row. North, even though you look at the scoreline, you suggest, oh, they were pretty bad. They weren't terrible, because we only scored 64 points ourselves. I think North Melbourne brought the game down into their terms a little bit, and we sort of played into their terms in a way, because it just wasn't a good game of footy. Terrible, sloppy. North, I thought they probably played their best game in a month, and it still wasn't that good of a game, but the fact they were a little bit more competitive against St Kilda, they didn't get blown away, and I thought they could have certainly scored more. I had a lot of mistakes up forward, a lot of missed opportunities. A game that no one's really going to watch back, and I think North could maybe build onto something there and maybe make this one a competitive one as well. Port Adelaide, they are on 5 wins in a row. They got a late scare at the end against the Bombers. It was a good game of footy from what I was told. Didn't get to watch a lot of it, but now 5 wins on the trot. They're looking in some good form. They're one of the more difficult sides to beat at the moment. I think Horne-Francis is going to have a good game against his former side. It's at Blundstone, though, so you never know what might happen. It could be a closer game than what a lot of people are saying. I don't think it's going to be the case. I think Port Adelaide can smash teams if they want to. It won't be a massive smashing, but it'll be a fairly comfortable one. I think Port win it. And I'll go 38 points. Horne-Francis, though, my big call. He records 100 or more fantasy points in this game. Now, the next game is another pretty easy tip, to be honest with you. Hawthorn take on Melbourne at the MCG. For some reason, though, between these two sides, it's always closer than what it really should be. And I think the last 2 games, I know Melbourne have won, I don't think can't remember the last time they lost against Hawthorn, but the last 2 have both been pretty close ones, obviously 2021 being the draw. But I just can't see this one being close, to be honest with you, after last week. I thought Hawthorn were finally playing into a little bit of form, but then they just dish up a load of shite against the Dockers, who obviously played better, switched up the game style a little bit, played probably their best game of footy all year. But I don't think as a Hawks fan you can be accepting that sort of performance, to be honest. They were in the game a little bit at the start, but then they just dropped off massively, losing it by 69. Melbourne could say they escaped a bit of a scare at the end of that game, that's for sure. I think they certainly could say that they got out of that one a little bit lucky, winning that game against the Suns. I think the Suns had a lot of chances to win that late. I don't think that game isn't really going to affect this one. Melbourne still got the win, and Gold Coast, we're playing some pretty good footy. Against Hawthorn, it's an easy tip. I'm not going the upset. I think Melbourne should win it pretty comfortably. They should take control all game, really. I don't see this one being close. I don't really see Hawthorn putting up much of a fight. I think Melbourne by 52 points is the simple tip. My big call, Bailey Fridge kicks 5 or more goals during this game. Next up, we got at the Gabba, we got Brisbane taking on Essendon, 7:25 PM on the Saturday night. This could be an underrated game for what I feel. I think these two sides could, put up a fairly good contest. I could see it being a close one, possibly. Obviously, Brisbane at the Gabba, they're really tough to beat, and at the moment, they're going pretty well form-wise. I think they're now 5 wins in a row. And on the weekend, I think they put those doubts to bed that they can't beat a good side away from home. Obviously, Carlton at the moment aren't going so greatly, but they were just simply the better side over the Blues, and they really probably should have won that game by more. When you really have a look at the stats, they had a few junk time goals at the end in Carlton, and players such as Josh Dunkley and Charlie Cameron, Zach Bailey were really good on the weekend. The Bombers, again, I think they've been okay in their losses. They've had a really tough month of footy, playing Geelong, Collingwood, and Port Adelaide away. And to not really be disgraced in any of those games, honestly, if I'm going to say it, I think the Bombers should have at least picked up 1 or 2 results in those 3 games. It's another game where I think the Bombers aren't going to be disgraced. They're going to take it up to Brisbane. But I feel like it could be a game played out similarly to how they faced against the Cats. They just start off poorly, and then they can kick goals late. I think this will be a high-scoring game. Obviously, 2 sides at the moment capable of scoring heavily, but it's at the Gabba. I'm not going to go any risky tips. I think Brisbane win it fairly comfortably. I'm going to go Brisbane by 30 points. My big call, though, 200-plus points combined in the game from both sides. Next game of the round is probably the toughest game to tip when you have a look at the odds, when you have a look at the tipping percentages. It's as even as it gets, to be honest with you, and it's a game where I've got my tip in my head right now, but it took me probably 10 minutes trying to figure out who I was going to go with this one. I kept changing it up because it's going to be, I just don't know. It's such a difficult game to tip. You've got Carlton on one hand, who are in a really bad form slump. You've got Western Bulldogs on the other hand, who are in a good patch of form for the last 5, but it's just the fact that I think Carlton at any game, at any stage, can play a good game of footy, and I think this could be that game. They just need to find that form. Obviously, on the weekend, we're just pretty average against Brisbane after quarter time. They were sort of flattered on the scoreboard at halftime. I thought they should have been down by a bit more, and then that third quarter came where Brisbane just piled on the goals. Carlton couldn't stop him, and they ended up, the game was over at 3/4 time. The Bulldogs, good win against the Giants. The Giants, were challenged. The Giants certainly challenged the Dogs at times in the first and the last, but the Dogs held on at the end of the game to win it by 14 or whatever it was. So, they keep on getting those wins, the Dogs. They're tracking along quite nicely. I think this is another game that they should win. I think if I was to tip a side based on form and based on who I think deserves a tip, I'd go the Dogs. I think the Dogs deserve the tip, and I was going to go them initially. Then I had a look at Carlton's next 4 games, and this is the easiest game they have by quite a bit, I think, in their next 4. So it is honestly just one of those games where you just need a response. It's almost a must for Carlton. Otherwise, I don't see them making finals if they don't win this game. This is honestly the game that makes or breaks their season. So because of that, and I just think that the Blues will find some sort of response. They've got an 8-day break. I'm going Carlton. I'm going to give one more week of faith into the Blues. I think they're going to get the win by 9. Good game of footy. It'll be close. It'll be tight. My big call, Kerno and Mackay combined for 8 or more goals. If the Blues want to win, they need to have big games. The 2 games on the Sunday, the Mother's Day games. Because it's Mother's Day, there aren't as many games on the Sunday, only just the 2. And this one's the one I'm looking forward to most. It's probably going to be one of the games of the round, I reckon. Adelaide take on the Saints at the Adelaide Oval. I'll be at this game, so hopefully witnessing a win on Mother's Day. Obviously, going to be a tough one though, because I think other than the Lions at the Gabba, obviously, and possibly put Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, I think playing the Crows at the Adelaide Oval at the moment is one of the toughest tasks in footy because they play their best footy there. They should have knocked off the Pies a couple of weeks ago. They just don't play a bad game at the Adelaide Oval. They're just a different side. They did lose to the Cats on the weekend. It wasn't really one to be too concerned about. They certainly challenged the Cats. They were certainly in the game for a lot of it. They just weren't really quite there. You never really felt like they were going to win the game. It got to 2 goals, I think, in the last quarter. It was only like 3 or 4 minutes to go. It was 2-goal margin, but then the Cats scored the last 2 goals late and won it by 26. A bit of an expected result, but nothing to be disgraced about. The Saints, it was a bit of a disgusting outing. I mean, we got the win, but it wasn't really too much to be proud about. I wouldn't really celebrate the win, watch the replay or anything like that. But, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. Our defence held up strong as normal. And as long as we play our better footy against the Crows in this one, that's all that matters. I think Max King is back, so should give us a little bit of an advantage in the forward line. I think there might also be a couple outs for Adelaide. Rochelle, if I'm not mistaken, I've been told. I might be wrong on that one. So, yeah, it's going to be tight. I think it's a 50-50 game. I think you're going to lead onto the Crows, though, if you're a neutral. I tip the Saints every round this year, but there's just something in me in this one that has Adelaide winning. I feel like they're due another win at the Adelaide Oval after losing against the Pies, and yeah, this is a tough game. It is going to be a tough one. I think Adelaide. Something just sees an Adelaide win, and I want to see if I can get 9-9 this round. So I'm actually going to go Adelaide. For the first time I'm tipping against the Saints. I'm going Adelaide by 4 points. My big call, Adelaide are up by 30 or more points at any stage of the game. And the last game of the round, another Collingwood Sunday game for some reason. Collingwood take on the Giants at the MCG Sunday 4:40. A pretty self-explanatory one, you would probably say, in terms of the tipping. Everyone's going Collingwood, so it seems. They recorded a good win on the weekend against the Swans, who were honestly pretty respectful in their defeat, to be honest with you. They were actually in the game for the majority of it. It was just that last quarter where Collingwood ran away with it. I think they kicked 5 goals. Maich kicked 5 goals, including an absolute freakish one in that last quarter. And to be honest with you, the Giants, they didn't have Toby Green for the game, which hurt them. If Toby Green was playing, you never know. They could have possibly pinched the win against the Dog. It was another plucky game for the Giants. They're just almost there. But I just don't think they're quite enough pieces in the puzzle for the Giants at the moment to really make much of an impact this season. But it was another game where, I thought they could have won it late. For some reason, though, weirdly enough, the Giants seem to always play well against Collingwood. They obviously lost it last year, but it was only like an 11-point game. They actually could have won that at the end of the Giants. I think it's going to be another similar result. Collingwood, I think they'll dominate. I honestly think they do. But Giants are just efficient in the way they play, and they'll find a way to stay in the game and only lose it by like a small margin. So I'm going Collingwood, obviously, but I'm going them only by 13. My big call, though, the Giants are goalless in any quarter they play. Alrighty, well, those are my tips for round 9. It's a relatively difficult one to tip in a way, but then you could also have a look at it in another way and go, well, there are quite a few easy games to tip that I think should get correct. So for my tips, I went the Cats by 23 on the Friday. On the other Friday, I went the Suns. I went Sydney, Port Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, Carlton, Adelaide, and Collingwood. And let's quickly take a look at my tipping competition. I have dropped quite a few places. I think I might have been like a 150th after last week. I'm now 383rd after that poor round in round 8. I'm not going to give any shout out to those that got a perfect 9-9 because there were so many people that got a perfect 9-9. It was actually Cooper, Stapleton, Chris McDees, Zach, Jonty, Lockie, and Angus Butters all with a perfect 9 with a margin of just the 1. But every person that does get a 9-9, I will quickly go through them so you guys can have a look. I just want to know how many people actually got a perfect score of 9. Well, that's crazy. That has to be a record. I don't think that's going to be topped all year. 261 people tipped a perfect score of 9. Certainly, if there was any round for you guys to get 9-9, it was this week, and I certainly didn't take the opportunity, only tipping 6. As we take a look at the total tippers, Jay Lagard tops a lot with 56, score of 8 on the weekend. Jettles the GOAT with a 9 of 11 with 55. Josh Morgan also on 55. Jason's Riders, Jack Bibble, Ice Tray. And then the ones on 54. We got quite a few. We'll quickly read them out. ESPN Tipping Master. That's Studi. I know that's Studi on 8th spot, so I don't know how he's doing so well. Jennifer on 9th with 54. Christian, Lincoln, George Tingate, Ginnivan owns your team. Brennan Moore, Pasindu, and Princey won also. For those that want to join the comp, we've got 1,165 members at the moment. The link's in the description to join it. Comment down below a punishment in the comments. Remember, leave a like on the video, 1,000 likes, and I'll be ordering those 2 costumes so we can just finally get those silly punishments out and done with. But until then, I'll see you guys very soon in my next video.